Why you decided to build a yurt?
We were already living in a wooden wagon for 8 years, and it's we took it as a challenge on ourselves. We were traveling in Kyrgyzstan, and maybe we were inspired a bit. We thought they were really cozy structures. The round space, it's a very friendly space to live in, I think.
The thing is, with a wagon, you have this, you know. You keep having this
box.
This tunnel. You're in the tunnel, and you wanted to break out of the tunnel. And the nice thing about the yurt is it's still mobile, because we break it down in a day, and we build it up in a day. But you don't have the tunnel. You have this, and that's it's a comfortable space to be in. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the moment that we said, okay, let's do this, was when they were pruning from the city the willow trees, and they had a lot of what you see in the frame, a lot of sticks. They were just garbage. They would make wood chips out of them, and we thought, we can already have the skeleton of a possible yurt if we save those. So we asked the street workers if we could just take them, and they said, of course, sure. For them, it's less work, and and then we peeled them with a potato peeler. Actually, when the sticks are fresh, when the trees are just pruned, the way to do it is just with a potato peeler. So we had friends coming over because it's quite laborious, the sticks also in the kana section and on the roof. We had a potato peeling, willow sticks peeling party.
Yeah, the willow sticks, actually, they were used in the past a lot. Like every farm in this area, Belgium, Netherlands, they had a row of trees where they would, we call them knotwilgen. They're coppiced willows, pollards, I think you call them in English, where you have a stem, and then from there you let the tree shoot, and you cut the shoots every few years depending on the thickness of the wood you want. And this was a way to produce wood. Nowadays, these trees, they are mostly landscape elements, so they're more used because they look pretty next to the road, but the wood itself, it's not used so much. Yeah. But it's a traditional technique to produce wood, because you have quite a developed root system, so it grows pretty fast.
And how did you come up with construction? And you already how to build it, or where did you find out about?
There's.
It was a lot of research. Okay. Well, not improvise. We did a lot of research,
to make
especially
sure it
Daniel. There's a very nice booklet, complete yurt handbook, but of course this one is for traditional yurts, and we made a few adjustments.
Just a few.
Also, I have to mention, maybe you have the traditional yurts that are built in Kyrgyzstan, in Mongolia, all over Central Asia, and they're from nomads that move from place to place. And aside from that, you have both in the US and in Europe quite a big movement of people building and adapting them to our climate, because the traditional yurts, they are basically in the desert. It's very dry, and if you would bring a traditional Mongolian yurt to the marshlands where we live, where it's very humid and very wet, it would rot away very quickly. So you do need to use different materials, and this adaptation, I mean, it's nothing we thought about. I mean, people have been doing this for decades, you can build a good structure if you choose your materials right. You can adapt some of the principles of the yurt construction. A lot of our inspiration, I think, it comes from you have many different companies that are building yurts, and all find kind of different solutions. So we investigated how are all these different companies doing it, what materials are they using, and then we made our decision.
Yeah, we
based on
took a
this.
bit from here and there, and yeah, we
Yeah.
adapted to our own needs.
Yeah, because
So-
And
there's a lot of
comfort.
choice of different fabrics and of different.
So what did you use for insulation? So in the floor is pier, and what is in the roof and in the walls?
It's sheep wool. So we have 2 layers. It's not sheep wool, it's sheep felt. So wool is kind of puffy, and then you felt it, and then it gets more compressed.
It's more efficient.
Yeah, you have a higher insulative value per volume, like that, and it's 2 layers of felt. We use felt from sheep in Texel, and it's in total. It's difficult to say how thick it is because it varies, but I think it's supposed to be 6 centimeter per layer. It's 2 layers, so it's 12 centimeters. But obviously, the material it's thinner in some places and thicker in others.
Flexible. Yeah, it's flexible.
The yurt itself, we have 4 fabrics. On the inside, we just have a cotton. That is the inside wall, which is nice and white. Then we have sheep felt, which comes from Texel, an island in the Netherlands, where there is a lot of sheep. And from their wool, we have a thick felt layer. It's maybe it's nice to say it's made by a company called Nooit meer haast, the never hurry again in Dutch. Then we have a polycotton canvas, which is a canvas that is 60% polyester, 40% cotton. It is waterproof, it is resistant to rot, and but it's not resistant to UV. So then there's one final layer, which is a titan spun polyester, and this layer it protects the canvas from the UV. And the nice thing about that one is we can just take it off and throw it in the washing machine, so then it stays nice and white. And at the bottom, because at the bottom there's some mud and rain, it's just bisonyle. So it's this. But for the rest, we cannot use bisonyle because it doesn't breathe. All the other materials, they are breathable materials, so moisture can go in and come out.
How long did it take to build it?
It's a good question. I'd say the basic structure, I would say 3 months.
Yeah, the basic structure, but it's still an ongoing process. The rest is not finished, so.
But I think after 3 months we moved in, no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
After 3 months we moved.
And about the process,
Well, I think the sewing was very challenging. Well, Daniel did all the sewing by himself. Sewing, that's the, you say sewing, not sewing, no? Sewing is when you sue somebody to court, yeah. So Daniel did all the sewing himself, but he didn't have any prior knowledge or experience with it. So it also takes a bit, because you need a heavy-duty sewing machine to do it. Yeah. And you needed a bit of there was a bit of trial and error, and also as you know you first start with making a dress or something when you learn sewing, but from the beginning he went for the sewing together the yurt canvases, and that's quite a challenge to put on yourself as a first project. But yeah,
I explain a little bit about the sewing, because actually the seams that we used, they are French seams, and I just show how they are made. So you have the fabric, and you have to always think on what angle. So here you're using it on this angle. You have one piece of fabric that is on the top, and this one is on the bottom. You sew one line here, and then you fold it like this, and you sew another line here.
Yeah, and super thick then.
And then what you see, the water, if it runs down from here, it will go on here, and you are sure that you won't have water leaking inside. And the problem is, though, with a seam like this, you have to go to 4 layers of fabric, And the fabric is quite heavy duty. It's so you need a strong sewing machine, a strong industrial sewing machine, and you need good needles. But I really enjoy the sewing. It's a nice skill to have and to develop. Before that, I worked a lot more with wood and with steel. And with wood, there's always a lot of dust. With steel, your hands are always black. It's quite dirty and noisy. While with sewing, the noise of the sewing machine, it's very rhythmical and kind of soft compared to the noises that the woodworking and steel, angle grinders and so, to the noise they make. And also, you need to be clean. Like with wood, there's always dust. With steel, it's the same. It's kind of dirty. Well, if you're dirty and you're working with fabrics, it doesn't work. You need to go take a shower and clean. So you're always clean, especially with the white fabric. Otherwise, you make stains on it. It's a different way of thinking, but it's also a nice, very nice activity. Actually, I find it very meditative to be sewing. And here, this is very important. We have my bird feeder. Now, of course, there's a lot of berries around, so the birds, they find enough food themselves. But here I have a little bird feeder, and all the birds, especially in winter, they come. And I have a perfect view from my window over there. And also here I have a little microphone. And with the microphone, I record the sound of all the birds that come to eat here. And then I have a BirdNet Pi, like a little Raspberry Pi. And he analyzes the sound of the birds, and it tells me exactly what kind of birds are around. So it's
the cats are also very interested in the birds.
So it's recording all the time, and whatever birds are around, when they make sounds, he analyzes it, and I have some statistics. I can see all the different kind of birds that come here to eat.
Yeah, and the cats, besides that they're very good companions, they're also very useful to keep the rodents away.
And you have been living 3 years now, and how do you like it still, or you would like to change your
yes,
house?
I think for us it's also a bit like child's play. Like we really like the challenge of building. We find it a very creative process, and we have fun while doing it. And our first project was the wooden wagon. It grew organically. It was not on purpose like that, but and then now we're living in a fabric structure. And I think the next project we'll take on is living in a steel structure, so whether a boat or a container. But we have been very happy living in the yurt so far. I think most people are asking, aren't you cold in winter? But I think it's more of a problem. It's such a small space, so it's really easy to heat it up with a stove like this. It's more of an issue how to cool it down in the summer than being warm in winter, really. But yeah, with the tonneau and with the two windows that open and the door, it ventilates quite alright also in the summer. One disadvantage with the yurt that we figured is that it's not sound insulated, so we do hear the trains passing by. It would be more idyllic to put it on a field somewhere in nature. Yeah.
I
But
do like the
we
sound
also
of the
like
trains,
the
actually.
convenience of, for the time being, we like the convenience of living so close to the city, so we compromise a bit on the sound. We learn to deal with it at night.
I also think like about yurts in general, they are good structures and it's nice to live on them, but it's good to realize they are maximized for mobility.
Yeah.
So I mean, this, you break it down in a day, you build it up in a day, and that's something that you cannot do with many houses. I mean, of course you have tiny houses on wheels, but then you have the tunnel. So they are optimized towards mobility. And I mean, you can have a more efficient house, a passive house, if you are sure you're gonna stay on the same place for a long time. If I would know for sure I was gonna live here for the next 40 years, I would build a passive house. I wouldn't build a yurt, because I do think it's important to build sustainably and to build efficiently. I think we have a responsibility to do that. But if you're in a temporary place where you know you will have to move at some point, I think it's a very good way. It's a good structure to live in, and it's a comfortable house. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it just fitted at in this period of our life very well.
Yeah. The idea is also, maybe it's nice to explain like the sort of niche where we live, because we live in the city. We found like former industrial places. Most cities, European cities, they are deindustrialized, so they had big parts that were used for industry that are now vacant. And quite often before they are redeveloped, there's social and cultural initiatives. And these type of places, often they are very prone to vandalism or people breaking in, and some permanence on places like this is required. But also the nature of these places is transient, so I mean, from time to time you will have to move. So in this sense, we are urban nomads. So we move
that's a good term,
with
urban nomads.
the different dynamics and developments of the city, and this is why it's important for us to remain mobile. And this is why the yurt for us, it's a good solution. Yeah. But if you have a permanent place, I think you can build a more efficient building.
Because we live in the old harbor of Ghent, and we're just making a temporary use of this terrain. But in the past there was heavy industry here, so the soil is heavily polluted. So we cannot have a vegetable garden, but we just put a lot of flower seeds and plants for the insects. Yeah, in the future, if you have a terrain of our own, we would like to do more gardening, also to feed ourselves from. But for now, we just we get a lot of our food from Let's Save Food. It's an organization that saves gets leftover food from the supermarkets and distributes it to community centers, and we help with that.
Here you can see the entrance for the cats. On the other side we have the entrance for the humans. It has two flaps, one from the inside, one from the outside, so it keeps the heat in a little bit better. And this is what the cats use to get in and out. And here around the back we have also the bicycle shed.
We have many bicycles.
If we have guests, they can take their bikes. And actually, out of these, 2 are not driving, so we have 4 driving bicycles for 2 people. So if we have 2 visitors, they have bikes, and if we have 3 visitors, we need to fix one of the bikes.
To maintain it, you have to take it apart, to clean it, to get moisture.
Once a year, at the minimum, you need to break down the yurt and build it up again. It's just this is basic maintenance. Yes.
And it's like to stretch it, to clean it, or what is the purpose?
The purpose, I think, it's also so if little insects or animals go to live in your insulation, you get them out like this, and you air everything. Yeah.
So you had some squirrels or something? No?
We haven't had them yet. We did have, but also the felt, it's treated with borax. So it's a salt, so it's not that attractive to animals as it would be if it weren't treated with borax. Yeah. For the garden, actually we, just like we recycle the wood, we recycle plants. So there is a container not too far from here, from a garden center where they throw away plants. And things like the potentilla, for example, we found in the container. We collect the plants that they throw away and we put them in the ground. And other than that, I also really like spontaneous vegetation. So spontaneous vegetation, it's maybe a nicer name for weeds. People would say maybe they're weeds. But I think if you just let the garden develop by itself, you see a lot of interesting things coming up. There's a few that are too aggressive and that will dominate all the rest, so those you have to keep in check a bit. But all in all, if you let it grow, you can discover a lot of interesting species. And not just plants, also insects. I spend a lot of my time trying to identify all the different insects and plants that come up here. Yeah.
In the summer it's a bit more colorful because there are more flowers. Now autumn just started, so it's...
Yeah, it's not the perfect time for the garden, but there's a lot to discover, yeah.
In general, I think both Daniel and I really like crafts, and we just try to teach ourselves as many skills as possible, even though like Daniel is very handy and I'm quite sloppy, like I'm not that good at it, but I still like trying, and I'm slow and I'm bad, but I like that that's part of our lifestyle, like anything from making jam and preserved vegetables in jars, but to making ceramics, like a lot of the things you see around, like the glass houses I made myself, the lamps. And Daniel makes all these wooden things, like the small jars. I carved the wooden spoons that you see in the kitchen. So we like all these small details, and to keep ourselves a bit busy with that, with a bit slower activities, but that give us a lot of personal content.
And it's always nice when you made something by yourself.
Yeah.
The whole structure, it is kept together by the tension band, which wraps around the yurt. And if you were to cut it, the whole thing, it would collapse on itself. So the idea is you have the walls, the roof poles and the tonneau, and the weight of all the fabrics that are laying down on it and of the tonneau itself, it pushes outwards. And this outward pressure, it is caught by the tension rand that sits around it. And because of this way of building, you can have quite a big structure without pillars in the middle that supports itself. If you were to cut it, the whole thing, it would collapse in on itself. But it's a strong fire hose, so it's
Yeah.
Is that the reason as well? You would have to take apart every year, and that you can check it as well. How good is it still? Or do you think it will hold?
No, it will hold. We had quite a few big storms here in Belgium, maybe once or twice a year. We have a really strong wind, especially, and they make quite some damage on the houses. You see like roof tiles flying off, solar panels, and we were concerned with this. Of course, we live in a tent, you know, and actually they're genius structures because they're very flexible. So it moves, but because it kind of weighs down, it's very stable, it's very safe. We never had any issue with it.
There's a few things in storms which make it strong, which make it stand a storm. First of all, it's round, so the wind will go around, and also it's made out of many small parts, so it can all move a little bit.
Yeah.
And it has many ways to sort of divide the energy that gets on it. Because I mean, we've had really serious storms in this one with very strong
and you
winds
feel the storm inside because you're very close to the outside. You're not like in a concrete building where you have no connection with the exterior. So you feel the movement, but at the same time you realize, oh, it's a very safe structure. Yeah, it's very solid.
It's one of the nicest things actually, to have a good storm when you're inside. I like it. Yeah.
You're close to nature, but still inside.
You feel the wind going around it. Yeah, and it's strong. It will keep staying, but you feel there's something going on outside.
I think as a conclusion, I don't know if everybody should embrace should go living in a yurt now. I think this is just a solution that fitted us at this specific moment in our lives, and I think the overall idea is that it makes us happy, but not because it's a yurt, but because we build it ourselves and according to our own needs. And I think everybody should embrace us to rethink the way they live and if it makes them happy. Whether it's a yurt or a container or a wooden wagon or even an apartment, if it comes with a twist, I think that's very nice. I think how you live affects your well-being and how you relate to your surroundings and your anything from your family to friends and animals. So yeah.
And at the end, if you're handy and you know what you're doing, then it's not so expensive project if you can recycle a lot of material.
Yeah, it's a lot of labor. Yeah,
So it was like 3 months of your work, like at the beginning. Now it's still keep going, but
it's an
for
ongoing,
the base.
Yeah, for the base 3 months.
Yeah, and around 4,000 investment.
Yes, around 4,000.
And of course setting up with time going.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, we also have our own tools. You need quite a few tools for building. So I'm not counting the tools.
And like sewing and everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it is much cheaper to buy materials new
and to hire somebody to build it.
But
if you count labor,
If you count labor, that's the thing. So recycling materials, I think now material prices are going up, so it's getting more and more favorable to recycle materials. But if you buy materials new, you have a lot less work to make the material do what you want and to make it exactly fit the application that you're going to use it for. But it's a creative process and it's a fun process, and I think if you have the time, it's something quite rewarding and something nice to do. And it's maybe something towards the future that will be more and more important as materials get more scarce, that we actually reuse, because the waste that our society generates, it's a tremendous resource of which you can do many things. Just the only problem now is it's for most applications not quite economical, given the amount of work that it takes to repurpose recycled materials. Yeah.
So I would never build such a structure or such a yurt for a commercial purpose. We build it for us to live in, to have a cozy shelter, but as a commercial project, it wouldn't make any sense, I think.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for sharing your story.
You're welcome.
The full tour in description below, and thanks for sharing, and see you the next time. Cheers.